certainly the door open to drafting a quarterback. Adam, what more can you tell us about Shedeur's meeting with the Raiders?
Well, listen, Laura, I don't think they trade for Geno Smith and then go quarterback in round one. And then they don't extend Geno Smith and then go quarterback. But they have to be prepared to look at all scenarios, which is why they're visiting with Shedeur Sanders. I think the people across the league still would be surprised if the Raiders use their first-round draft pick on a quarterback when they have needs at other positions like running back, like offensive tackle. I think people could see them going a different direction than quarterback, but you don't know where Shedeur Sanders is going to wind up going in this draft, and they're doing their due diligence. Usually when teams are meeting with players this late in the process, there are questions they want to have answered, there are visits they want to take, there are little things that they want to get squared away before the draft comes to be next week in 10 days. And so the Raiders are getting that last-minute information. But I still think that to people across the league, it would surprise them if the Raiders went quarterback in round one.
All right, so I agree. But, Mina, does Sanders to the Raiders make sense in your opinion?
No, it doesn't really make sense to me. I don't think he's an upgrade over Geno Smith, who you guys know I'm very high on. I also think even though Geno's not on a particularly expensive contract, you're not reaping the benefit of having the rookie quarterback on a rookie deal if you draft Shedeur, and there's a real opportunity with pick 6 to upgrade elsewhere on the offense. And it's, by the way, I think with Geno Smith, Chip Kelly, some of the pieces they have in place already, this offense could be surprisingly explosive, Dan.
I like the Raiders. I think that Shedeur fits a lot of teams, but he does nothing for your next 24 months if you're the Raiders. This is a defense that is not good. They need an infusion of talent. And so while you could sit there and make the case of, like, yeah, draft Shedeur, and maybe you could sit a year or two behind Geno Smith and he's your future, it doesn't. And John Spytek's words, their general manager that we just heard, for me, were telling when he said, get the Raiders to where we want to go. And then he said, there's no one player that is going to change that. And so if it was especially the most important position in all of sports, that would be something where I think he would word it differently. But the way he worded it spoke very loudly to me that they are not taking a quarterback in the first round.
Okay. Man, I'm not going to go on the whole rant about the defense again because I already did that recently, talking about, like, calling out the defense. Ironically, it's Dan Orlovsky again. So I already had that take, but I really take issue with this automatic of, like, oh, this defense isn't good, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think this defense will play significantly better, not only because of Pete Carroll, but because they should, in theory, be healthier, et cetera, et cetera. They have more of a reason to play. Like, I already did the whole deep dive on all of that. Now, especially once you actually have a competent quarterback, you're turning the ball less, turning the ball over significantly less. Like, you're sustaining drives. Like, you feel like you're actually playing for something. Like, it's hard to go out there and play defense if you don't really feel like you're playing for a win that actually matters. Outside of you just trying to, like, earn your money, or some of you players that are just trying to, get your stats, get your numbers, get a Pro Bowl, whatever. Like, it's hard out there. It really is. And we see this with all of the big defensive players who are on struggling teams. It's no surprise that you had Max Crosby and Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, and they're all like, what are we doing? I can't keep doing this. Can you please get me a quarterback? Can you please get me an offense? Do you know how hard it is to play the position that I play? Like, it's exhausting. And the only way you can make me happy is at the very least you give me a boatload of money. Otherwise, I'm out of here. I can't keep doing this. And you see it with that position, honestly, probably more than anything else. So, defense is so effort-based, but okay, that's as much as I said on that. But, it's such an extreme to take. So, like, even if you believe that Shedeur Sanders is an unbelievable quarterback, like, you're saying that he does nothing for you in the next 24 months. Like, oh man, I just take such issue with that. That just fundamentally does not make sense to me at all. But it just doesn't make sense. And, I feel like I've already kind of explained that aspect with the defense. But listen, and Schefter kind of took what I was about to say to a degree. What I actually really love about this is that the Raiders are just doing their due diligence. And that is a foundational component of what you want your team to do. Even if they're not going to get, Shedeur Sanders or whatever it may be, when you just do your due diligence, because maybe they actually realize, dude, Shedeur Sanders is actually way better than anyone realizes, or whatever it may be, or and they've said, yeah, but we just paid Geno Smith, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Shedeur is going to be special. Like, you just always want to do your due diligence. You just always want to do your research. You always don't want to leave any stone unturned. It's just what you do, man. It's just what the smartest teams do. It's what the teams that are consistently great do year after year after year. You do your due diligence. You do your job. That's why you get paid all this money. That's what this time is for. Because if you're not doing that, then what are you doing? Right? So it's just like, whether you think that you're going to draft Shedeur or not, it still potentially makes sense in this moment of time to be like, let's have a workout. Let's talk to him. Like, whatever information you're looking for, the information that you think you don't have. And right, maybe Shedeur falls to the second round. And so maybe, right, in their first draft pick, they are going to get, like, who knows, Genty, whatever. And then maybe Shedeur continues to fall. No one's getting him. And then you get him in the second round. Like, it's literally what the Philadelphia Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. And they had Carson Wentz. And I've used this example plenty of times recently, but it's true. Like, they got Jalen Hurts not to replace Carson Wentz initially. They just didn't. They wanted Carson Wentz to stay there, but Carson Wentz kept getting banged up. They already paid him at the time top dollar. It was like $150 million or whatever, and it was top dollar. But Carson Wentz got injured. I think essentially like 3 playoffs in a row. The Super Bowl, and then the following year when Nick Foles stepped up, and then the third year when he got injured again and he got like concussed in the middle of the game against the Seattle Seahawks. I think that's the trajectory. And so they went out and got Jalen Hurts, and then even they still wanted to keep Carson Wentz. They did everything they could. They fired Doug Peterson. Like, they were not trying to be like, hey, okay, see ya, Carson. Now we got Jalen. But like, Howie Roseman did his due diligence. He understood Carson Wentz is getting a little banged up. Maybe this isn't, what we originally thought it was going to be. We still want to keep him. We still believe that there's a lot of juice there, but hey, we can get Jalen Hurts, second round. Let's do it. It directly led the Eagles to 2 Super Bowls, and a Super Bowl win. You can't ask for much more than that, man. Since they drafted Jalen Hurts, they go into the playoffs every single year, went to multiple Super Bowls, and then won a Super Bowl. So, like, that's what you do when you do your due diligence. And whether it's Shedeur, whether it's another quarterback, whether it's a defensive end, like whoever it is, you just always do your due diligence. The teams that don't, the teams that overlook some of these little things, that's when you get yourselves in trouble. That's when you just go very quickly nowhere. So, again, I have no strong desire to try to figure out, are they going to draft Shedeur? Are they not? Should they? Should they not? At this point, we're 10 days in, 10 days or so away from the draft itself. We're just gonna have to wait and see. There's no reliable way to predict any of this type of stuff. But to me, at the very least, like, I wanted to make this video because it's just like, that signals to me of like, good. The Raiders are doing their due diligence. They're doing what well-run franchises do, and that's awesome. They're looking at all of this from like a grounded approach, and they're looking at it through all the various lenses. They're looking at it from all the various angles, and if something in the last minute peeks up to them and they go, you know what, man, there's something here, you go out and get it. Or if something falls in their lap later on in the draft and they're like, well, what do we do here? They have the answers. They're not like, oh man, we should have met with him. I don't know. Do we think, is it worth it? Is it not? Like, you don't have to do that. They've already had these conversations. They make, like a decision tree where it's like, if this person's available, we do this. If this person's not available, we do that. Like, they go through all of the various options, and maybe they realize, hey, he's probably going to drop. So like, and we have a bunch of picks, like, let's draft, again, I'm just using Genty as a placeholder. Let's draft Genty first round, and then we'll be able to trade back up and get Shedeur. Like, who knows what they want to do. And so, again, doing your due diligence is just never the wrong thing. So I love to see this out of the Raiders. It really does feel like things are finally turning the corner for that. And that's why this whole idea that if you could draft, again, if you believe Shedeur to be a great quarterback, which I'm pretty sure Orlovsky does, that he does nothing for the Raiders for the next 2 years. I can't fathom that take. It doesn't make. Who were the Washington Commanders last year? Like, I don't understand. And that defense wasn't great. And they brought in Dan Quinn, a defensive head coach, and they brought in a great offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. Like, it's actually very similar to what the Raiders are doing. The only difference is that they have an established quarterback right now in Geno Smith. So like, I don't know. I don't know. Does someone know something that I don't know about the Raiders and Dan Orlovsky's history? Usually people are always very good at letting me know like random things of like, oh, he hates the Raiders because and I don't think he hates the Raiders, but it's just like people always point out that stuff like that. But like I don't understand. It kind of confuses it. Not kind of, it definitely confuses me. So we will see. But I hope they run with Geno because I want to see what that looks like. And I do think that they could have a lot of success with Geno Smith, and I am curious to see what they do in this draft. But, you know, all in all, they're doing their due diligence. It's all you can ask for in April, honestly. And you know what? Surprisingly, a lot of teams don't do it. So the Raiders have officially joined that party. That's a good thing. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Las Vegas Raiders? You know, meeting up with Shedeur, potentially drafting him. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.